Rebel religion in the news.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rebel Religion in the News, where we take the day's news items and see how they pertain to our walk with God. We're talking about addictions today, specifically drug and alcohol addictions for men. Where I are in Chico, California. If you're listening on the radio, you already know that because that's where we're based out of, and we air out in this area in the North State. But if you're watching somewhere else, we are in Chico, California, northern part of the state. And my co-host is Alfredo Romero of Rock of Life Fellowship in Chico. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
And our guest today is Jim. I want to make sure I get the pronounced right. Don't tell me. Like Secola.
Nope. Secola.
Secola. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Jim Secola. Got it. The executive director of the Chico Rescue Mission. Good morning, and thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Did I get it right? The addictions are predominantly or completely involving drug and alcohol?
Yes. Yeah. But not exclusively, though. We do deal with gambling and sex addictions as well, but on a lesser scale.
How many, do you call them patients, clients? How many clients?
We call them disciples. We're teaching them, and then they follow the program and follow Christ, using Christ's principles to change their lives.
How many are there that you're working with?
Right now we have 19, but we're capable of taking up to 65, and we're growing back to that.
How do you find out about these people? Who sends them to you?
A lot of times it's the courts. They get in trouble with the law and get charges, and part of their options is to go to a program, and they'll come to us, and then we...
And the fact that the program is faith-based doesn't bother the government?
No, because it doesn't cost them anything.
Right.
We don't get any funding from them, so we can do what we want. The person chooses to come here. They don't have to come to us. They don't send them to us. They ask to come to us.
How bad are some of the addictions?
Really bad. I mean, there's one recently that the draw of the addiction is just crazy, and they are incapable of making correct decisions for themselves.
Of the 19, how many are drug and alcohol? How many are sex related? How many are gambling related?
Right now, it's all drug and alcohol.
It is.
Yeah, every one of them.
How does it happen? How does this? Is there a similar story about how everybody gets started? Is there a common thread in their stories?
It's usually self medicating is what it is. There's something going on. There's usually a deeper issue, and they use it to cover it up. And then it starts off. The subtle thing is it starts subtly. It doesn't, you don't end up in the gutter the first day. It feels good, and it's like, well, hey, I like that. And then they just continue until it's got a hold of them.
How long does it take the average addict to get through the program where they don't need your help, or are they with you for a good 5 to 10 years, or for maybe life?
Well, sometimes it's for life. There's guys that have been there now 16 years. They stay on staff. They just stayed on staff. They realize the structure there is what they need, and they like to stay there and help others. The average stay is 1 year. That's the program. Is 1 year long. But we do offer transitional housing, and a lot take that option as well. When they first graduate, they realize, hey, I'm not quite ready yet. I'm working. I need to get my ducks in a row, and they'll stay however long they need to.
Talk about the role of Christ in their recovery.
That is center. That is absolutely the center there. I graduated the program 21 years ago.
Oh.
And I'd quit before, but it only lasted a few months, and I'd end up going back to it. And then I accepted Christ, and everything changed. It was just, I can't explain it. It's an experience.
How long does it take for them to accept Christ? Because I would imagine, is the first day they come in, you throw a Bible at them and say, get on your knees and pray to Jesus?
No.
When does Jesus enter the equation?
He enters right off the bat, but we don't beat him up with it. A lot of them that come in already know God and are willing to accept God. Some come in are just atheists. They don't believe. Some just don't know. And we do start off the 12 steps. It's Bible-based 12 steps. We have Bible studies Monday through Friday, 3 times a day. And they're exposed to it, and it takes usually.
I wonder what the, if you don't mind sharing, like, let's say out of 20 guys, what's the success rate of recovery for these people?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. Our purpose is to share the gospel. That's number one. Second is changing their lives through the teachings of Christ. We get through to everybody. So that part of it they're hearing the word. That's 100%.
Yeah,
As far
salvation.
as success from addiction, that's a harder one because once they leave, we don't really have a measure of where they are. But I would say it's probably, which the national average is less than 9% 1 year after 1 year program. I'd say we're closer to 20. But a lot of those will mess up and then come back out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They
sure,
get the tools, they may go and mess up. Sometimes relapse is part of it. And it's just, you go, oh man, now I remember why I don't like this. And they'll pull back. And they usually will come back to us too. They'll come back and say, hey, I need help.
I would imagine, and they're all men. I want to be sure
Yes.
it's all for men. I would imagine that some of these men had a religious upbringing somewhere along the line. Most of us do.
Yeah.
And then they sort of fall away from it. Do some of them come back to you and say, boy, I really fell away from God. That's what forced this to happen.
Yes, that does happen. Yeah. Some of them, like you get in this younger generation, they've had no exposure to it at all. I mean, it's just, the way the world is nowadays. And they come in and they have really no idea except for what they've seen on TV or something or just heard. But
that's not always a good thing.
no.
No, I mean, even as a church, we deal with a lot of people that are, addicted or coming out of that lifestyle, trying to come out of that lifestyle, just walk into a church. And we've had counselors and people and pastors work with them a lot. And I will tell you, there is definitely not the success rate that we would like to see.
Right.
And I would attribute that mostly to kind of like the psychological damage that happens after a while from just abusing drugs for so long.
Right.
But we still believe that God's the healer and that people can be healed. But obviously, the first thing is for us is salvation.
Yes.
Turn the lives over to Christ and then see what God will do from there.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we deal with.
That's what we work with first too. Is we're trying to bring them to Christ so they can see that He's the answer.
Right.
And that, like I said, for me, that I can't explain it because it's an experience. Words just fail.
Yeah.
But it was God. That was the only dynamic that changed in my recovery personally, was adding God to the equation. And once I did, He took it away. I went through my little withdrawals for a few days, and then I've never, ever once craved getting high again.
Now, do people live on site or do they live
Yes.
in their own home? They live on site.
Yeah, they live on site. Everybody, it's a residential program. They move in. They move in for a year, and we have it's an old motel, so we got 3 guys per room, and we just look at the Bible. 3-cord strand is not easily broken, and they just kind of bond with each other and make their journey.
This is on Esplanade?
Yes, 2612 Esplanade.
Yeah, I pass by it a lot. I remember it used to be in a hotel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we were thinking that, the biggest thing that we have to deal with is, and you just kind of mentioned the 3-cord strand, a lot of the times that we deal with people that are addicted is get them away from the bad influences
Yes.
and the people in their lives that would just bring them down and
Yes.
not build them up.
That's absolutely
Trying
critical.
to break these old relationships that are bad for them.
Absolutely critical. So what we do is when they first come in, they can't have visits or phone calls. They can make a phone call when they get there to let people know they're there, but no personal calls. And for the first 3 weekends, and then they're on blackout for 60 days. So they can't use the phone. They can have visits starting on the 3rd weekend. So their family can come if it's safe.
But if you're addicted, we're speaking to, I'm going to, please say the name.
Jim Secola.
Secola, like
Yeah,
Pepsi-Cola.
that's right.
Jim Secola, the executive director of the Chico Rescue Mission. Jim Secola.
Nope,
Secola. Let me put that O there. I'm having a hard time with that.
That's
Jim
right. Everybody
Secola.
does.
Okay. I know my name gets messed up all the time, so I feel the pain. I forgot where I was going to go. I was trying to remember what we were going to talk. I was going to ask you, do some of the people who use your services, I mean, do they have to stop cold turkey? Is it just
Yes.
that,
Yeah.
does that cause some screaming freak out sessions with some of these?
If they're that bad and they're going to have DTs or severe withdrawals from like methadone, which is actually worse than anything else, methadone, heroin or something like that, they have to go to Detox first. And the only Detox, unfortunately, is in Redding, and it's pretty expensive. But we do work sometimes with the hospital. They'll give them some things to get them through it for like 5 days worth of medications to help them through it. We can't deal with that because it's a medical issue.
Yeah.
Is there a period of like 5 days, 7 days, 10 days where it's just really bad, and then they're over that hump, and then it starts to ease, or is it take longer than that?
It can take longer than that. It depends on their attitude. If they're ready and they're broken, they can jump right in. I mean, they'll be right in on it, going, you know what, I'm done. But there's ones that unfortunately they go through the whole program and don't change.
How does somebody know when they're broken?
Life becomes unmanageable, and you just don't want to. You're so miserable. For me personally, it was the misery that drove me. The life I was living was so miserable. I'm like, I'm done, and I just pled to God. God help me.
Now, I remember George Carlin said something, and I'm no fan of George Carlin, but he said something that was very interesting before he passed, and he was on a talk show, and he got serious for a moment, and he said, why, somebody asked him, you stopped doing drugs, and he says, why did you do that? And he says, because the pain of taking drugs was greater than the thrill I got of taking the drugs.
Yeah.
The pain was greater.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That it gets so miserable that getting high doesn't even do anything anymore. Like, I keep going back to me, but that's the experience that I had. It was so miserable that no matter what I did, I still felt miserable. So it wasn't giving me that feeling that I had when I first started it.
Do you think that's God working in us?
I do.
I do too.
Because see, when I got saved before I got clean, I actually went back out, and when I went back out, it was different. It just was different. It was just dark. I didn't like it.
You felt the more spiritual side of it.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not. I can't explain it. The words just don't come that to adequately describe it. But it just made the change. God is the difference, 100%.
Yeah, I was gonna say you said something about George Carlin said about quitting. Richard Pryor once said, I had to quit drugs because I got tired of waking up on the highway doing 80.
Yeah.
So you just wake up. You go, wait a minute. You just all get this epiphany of where you are in reality.
Absolutely. AA calls it a moment of clarity. I call it my God moment. That it just was. There it is. It's like, okay, what are you going to do? And I could see everything from what I was doing, what I'd done before, and where I was headed. And I just went, I'm done. I'm not going out like this.
That's awesome. My family lost my nephew, my sister's son, to addiction. We tried for years to get him into rehab, and he went a few times, but he just couldn't pull out of it. And right when he kind of got clean, he had this emotional moment in his life, and he went, this has just happened a year ago, but he went back to it, and unfortunately, what he ordered was laced with fentanyl.
Yeah, that's a big thing now.
Yeah. Well, God bless you.
We're going to take a break. We're talking to Jim Secola. I got it right. The executive director of the Chico Rescue Mission. We're going to talk about how they're able to sustain themselves and the difficulty of keeping this nonprofit organization going and more of the good work that they do. We'll be right back.
Hey, welcome back to Rebel Religion in the News. We have a guest this morning, Jim Secola from the Chico Rescue Mission. We've been talking about addictions and faith-based. And one thing I wanted to bring up was I was pulling up some articles, and I just found it interesting that New York Times, just a year ago, less than a year ago, came out with an article saying people have a right to non-religious rehab. But I don't see a very good success rate in that. I pulled up other articles that were showing the success rate of non-religious rehab programs and religious, faith-based.
Right.
And it's no comparison.
No.
You have to have faith in there.
Right. Even if you go back to the beginnings of AA, it started in a church, and they try to secularize it as much as they can. But, what I've seen with people that do it non-religiously or non-faith-based is the term dry drunk. Their life's still a mess. They're still struggling. Everything's a struggle. God gives us release from that. Like, I don't feel like I'm an addict anymore. I mean, I do feel like I've been delivered from it. I mean, I'm not dumb about it, and I'm careful, but I don't live that miserable life that I see people doing this secular program.
That's a good point, because I was thinking we have some recovering addicts in our church, and a couple of them choose to say, I'm still an alcoholic. I just don't. But that's always kind of, as a pastor, always kind of bothered me a bit, because God says we're a new creation. The past is passed away as far as the east is from the west. The sins are forgiven. So I don't know if your identity, this is my personal opinion now as a pastor, I don't know if your identity should still be, well, I'm an alcoholic. It should be more, I've been delivered from that. Right. That's not me anymore. That's the old me. God made me a new creation.
I have a direct story on that. When I first came in the program, I was miserable about it. I'm like, I have to live like this for the rest of my life. I got to carry this burden with me. It's always going to be a lifelong struggle. And I just was going, man, I don't know if I can handle that. And a pastor who passed away, but his name was Louis Ricky, came in and he points at me and he goes, "You're not an addict anymore." And I was like, "What?" He said, 2 Corinthians 5:17, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, they're a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new." And I said, that's it. That's what I want. And that made a difference. And I get goosebumps just
Yeah,
talking
good,
about
good,
it.
good. That's good.
So,
How does the Chico Rescue Mission sustain itself?
we mostly through our vocational training. We have a detail shop and a landscape crew. And we're now expanding. We're starting a handyman crew, and we're working on putting together a hauling crew and a painting crew. And we don't charge a fee. When the people come in, they can just come in off the street. They don't need any money. And they work for their recovery, and it teaches them good habits.
And so, so if somebody needs their house painted, give me an example of how
We're not
it
through
works.
painting yet.
Okay,
we're putting that together. But
My car needs to be detailed.
but we used to. But you just we're on the Esplanade. 2401 Esplanade is the detail shop. You just go in and either make an appointment, or if they can get you in right there, they do that. And the guys come out and they wash your car and clean the inside, and they do a really good job.
Oh, really? And then there's a fee for that, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
We charge a fee for the detail, just like anywhere else, and that's what sustains us. That's what we pay our mortgage.
and you get donations too, I would think.
Yes, we do get donations, and that helps. That's probably 50% of
Really?
what.
Is it hard to get donations nowadays? One, the economy is so bad.
A little bit, but there's still people that they want to give, and
Yeah.
they like what we're doing, and they've either come by and used one of our services, or they know somebody who went through the program, and they're like, "Hey, we like you," and they send monthly donations.
That's nice. I was watching a public service announcement this past weekend, and it was a very moving one. It had to do with a Holocaust survivor. It was an old woman, and they had the music, and it was a real tearjerker, and it really affected me. But and I thought I should probably give to this, but I just couldn't do it because there's so much distrust
Yeah.
of giving somebody money. You feel like you're just throwing it into an abyss, and you have no idea where it's going.
Exactly.
Do you find that people sometimes feel, even with an organization that so clearly does good work and they could see it firsthand, is there still sort of that apprehension with some people in terms of giving?
Yes, there is, and I get it. I understand it. There's so many shady things out there that they don't know. So that's why we're trying to do more community stuff so they can see us and say, "Hey, look, this is what we do." And all of the money goes into the mission. I mean, there are some, salaries and stuff like that, but we're very, very minimal.
Yeah, I would challenge the churches that are listening or watching to support you.
Yeah.
The Chico Rescue, because we do, as churches, we deal with a lot of people in our congregation that are either recovering or trying to recover or have.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a testimony Sundays about every 3-4 months. And we've had people come up and tell their testimonies of how God delivered them from these addictions.
Right.
So, many different types of addictions, like you were talking about.
Right.
So I would challenge the churches to support you at all.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
We could use it. We are struggling in this economy. I mean, prices have gone crazy. PG&E is
sure.
outrageous. And just insurance is
Oh
alone.
gosh, don't tell me about insurance. Oh,
Yeah.
I
wow.
cry every time I get that bill. I'm like, oh.
I do too. I have 4 car payments and a housing bill, and
Yeah.
it's gone. That's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
nobody wants to hear about my problems paying insurance. But yeah, it's
I'll listen.
50% increase over the last year.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing. So, but your overhead must hopefully is met by the donations.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the idea of that they're working for their stay and their recovery and their
Right.
treatment. That's amazing. I think I want to go back a little bit to that article that I read in the New York Times about non-faith based. Have you ever had anyone walk through your treatment program, get recovered, but refuse God?
Yes, it has happened, and unfortunately they usually don't.
They don't make it.
They don't usually continue. They usually go out and use again. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the reason you think that there's the rejection of Christ?
Because Christ is what we need. That's what we need. That's the hole. We got that God-shaped hole in our heart, and that's what we're trying to fill with these drugs and stuff. To self-medicate, and make feel better, and all that. But when you accept Christ, all of that just goes away.
But why do you think people reject them? When you said that there were those who would say, "I'm not buying into the whole Jesus thing. I want to get cured from this, but I think I could do it without Jesus." Why is it? I mean, you come across people, as you say, who reject Christ.
Right.
I think we all do to some extent, but you come up face to face with people who will talk to you and tell you, "I'm rejecting Christ."
Right.
Why? Why do they reject him?
It's in the Bible. They're just, I think, because of the world and all the influences from everything, that they just harden their hearts, and they just, and that goes to trust as well. They trust in the world and people taking advantage, and they just harden their hearts, and they just refuse to listen.
Part of the thing that we see when we work with people trying to get over addictions, and I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, It'll actually take a miracle from the Lord to overcome some of the brain damage that they've had,
Yes.
and not getting to a part of rationality that they've lost.
Right.
Understanding truth and lies, it just gets very fuzzy.
Right.
So we always pray for this miraculous healing for their brain, really,
Right.
because so much damage after so many years. We prayed for that for my nephew, my sister's. He just, like I said, it was about a year ago during Thanksgiving. It's heartbreaking to the families.
Absolutely.
And that's probably one of the biggest damages that I see in people that are struggling with addictions. It separates them from their family.
Yes. Yeah, it
And
does.
That's one of the saddest stories, I think.
It is. But I've seen reconciliation as well. That when they turn it around, the family just comes around
Oh,
them, and that's just
It's
phenomenal.
a celebration.
It is, absolutely.
It's fantastic.
I'll tell you, one of the neatest things about my job is I get to see them come in broken, and I can watch them, and you can just see it in their face. If they're taking it and things are changing, the countenance on their face, you just see them from being just disgruntled and mad and just hateful to, hey, this is a good day. Hey, how you doing, brother?
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. And you just see it, and it's just like you talk about the difference between secular and faith-based. That's where I see it is in that.
I don't know if they're a competitor of yours, and if they are, forgive me, but I did some stories when I was doing news with the Elijah House.
Oh yeah,
And I don't know if they're still in existence. I don't know if they are.
I'm not sure.
But I came across
think so.
I came across an individual, and he said that the key to his recovery, and he was in a bad way, very bad way, was that he took the total blame for the situation he was in.
Yes.
He didn't blame it on his parents. He didn't blame it on friends who got him involved in this. He said, I am 100% to blame. I take full responsibility.
That's right.
There's no one to blame but me.
That's right. That is 100% correct, and that's the difference between secular and faith-based. Faith-based, you're forgiven from Christ, so you can take that and take accountability for what you did. In the secular-based, it's a disease. It was my disease. It wasn't me. My mom yelled at me. Blah blah blah. And there's some horrible stories. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I mean, I hear people's stories, and I'm like, man, I would use too.
And I came across another man who was sexually abused by his uncle when he was like 9 or 10 years old. I thought if anybody has an excuse for getting involved with drugs, it was this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt for this guy.
Yeah.
He had somebody to blame, but he still said, I need to take the blame.
Yes. Well, you don't take the blame. You take the responsibility of the recovery. You're like, okay, all these bad things have happened. Okay, we all have our stories.
Right.
And to one extent or another, the worst thing that's happened to you is the worst thing that's happened to you. But it's taking responsibility for your recovery. Like, nobody's coming to save you except Jesus, but nobody's coming to save you. I need to take responsibility in all of this to change my life. That's important to me, I think.
Yeah, that's it right there. I think I've heard the stories of abuse, and my nephew actually suffered some abuse when he was younger, but ultimately now you can understand when it's faith-based that there is a higher power, there is God, there is Christ who can make new creations. That's one thing about I love about the Lord, is that He's in the restoration business.
Absolutely.
And so He can take any situation and heal it and fix it and cure it. There's more hope, obviously, in a faith-based organization than I see in secular.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see the accountability like you do in a faith-based organization.
We only have a minute left. I want to quickly talk about something else I thought about. The men I were talking about started with the gateway drug, marijuana, which seems to be encouraged nowadays in our society to take it. Yeah. Is it a gateway drug? Does it lead to other things?
I mean, it's not like, oh, I smoked some pot, now I want to do heroin, but it gets you in that environment of self-medicating. It's just that it eases you into it. And that's how it started with me. I smoked pot for 10 years, and then I smoked meth, and that was it. It was a wrap.
You look at something like this, and you think, there's no way a guy like this is going to have ever gotten addicted to anything. And it's possible.
Yeah.
Jim Secola, thank you so much. The executive director of the Chico Rescue Mission. If you're watching the podcast, you can see the contact information on your screen. If you want to find out more about him, you're listening on the radio. Area code 530-343. 1935, the Chico Rescue Mission, located on the Esplanade. Look them up, Google them, Chico Rescue Mission. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Donate and support.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. So long, everybody.
Rebel religion.